Hi, and welcome to This Is Ibrox, The Interviews. Our very own Martin Douglas talks with former Rangers player and current FC Kashmir manager David Robertson to discuss his career, Rangers, and his current role. Martin started by asking how Davey is coping as the world continues to be gripped by the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak.
Shut up and sit down.
I suppose we really need to start by talking about this coronavirus and how's it affecting you and your family?
Well, it's quite hard here. Where my wife Kim and my son Mason, who plays for Real Kashmir, we are sort of stranded in the northern part of India, obviously close to the Pakistan border. So all the flights have been cancelled, all the international flights to and from India, and all the domestic flights, they've all been cancelled. And we're currently, I think, day 5 into a 21-day lockdown in India. So that the Prime Minister Modi, he sort of instructed that to happen 5 days ago. But we've been in the hotel, the owner's hotel, for probably a week prior to that. No one's been allowed in the hotel, no one's allowed out. There's only, obviously, myself, Mason. We've got Callum Higginbottom here. We've got 2 Scottish coaches here, and we've got 4 African players that are, and the owner of the hotel and owner of the club. So we're just sort of stuck, almost deserted. Obviously, there's not much signs of getting home, although it's a bit weird. You see all the German government and Spanish government, American government, all that sort of, getting all their citizens home, but the UK don't seem to be doing anything. So we missed the cut-off. We tried before the cut-off to get out of India, but we couldn't get it, so we're really stranded in the back of beyond, really.
Is the Indian government taking it all quite seriously then, yeah?
Yeah, they have. I think India are probably 3-4 weeks behind, like Europe and the US. So, they've sort of seen what's happened, and because there's a population of 1.3 billion, they've decided almost from day one, a 21-day lockdown. Flights were cancelled for 2 weeks, and that's been extended even longer. So, if you're caught out, I think there's an imprisonment, or I've even seen some on TV, some people even getting beaten up if they're outside. So they're taking it pretty serious.
How are you finding being stuck in the hotel with everybody? Because I've been in lockdown now for 6 days with my family, and I'm ready to tear my hair out.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. Being at Real Kashmir at times, you have to go without internet. You get isolated from time to time. But to be honest with you, it'd be a lot easier being at home. We've got 2 other kids at home. It's very difficult. The days are so long. You try and go to bed late so you sleep in longer, and then once you wake up, you look forward to your lunch, and then a cup of coffee about 5 o'clock, and then dinner at 8. So that's about the highlights of the day. There's a gym here that I keep threatening to go to, so I can't be that bored that I haven't actually went yet. So I've threatened and threatened. I put a pair of shorts on one day thinking to go, but it never happened. So, but as I say, I'd prefer to be in my house with family, or also with Kim and our kids. You could go in the garden, you can do stuff in the house. We're in the middle of renovating the house as well, so it would be probably better time spent there. But it's just, it is what it is, and I suppose at the moment we're in a safe place, sort of locked in a bit, but safe enough.
Oh yeah, I've got a cross trainer that multi-purpose uses a clothes horse, so I know how you feel.
Yeah, I know what you're like, yeah.
So was management always something that you were going to get into then?
No, it wasn't. No, when I was playing, it was the last thing I ever thought about doing, and I think probably all the players that I've played with over the years probably thought I would be the last guy to be a manager of a team, and particularly where I am now. But it's something that, I feel when you play, you take it for granted, and you don't think what's going to happen after that. And then for me, it's more a case of the winning and losing, the highs and lows of the competitive part. That's the things that I really miss. It's a bit like a drug to me. I have to have that. Even when you lose games, you've got the determination, and okay, it's disappointing, but then you just work harder to try and win the next game. And when you win, it's a great feeling, just like when you played. And it's, as I say, it's not something that I ever thought I would do, but somehow I found myself in here and started to do coaching badges and started at Montrose, Elgin, then back to Montrose. Then I went to Phoenix and I coached there for 10 years, ran a youth organisation and coached a USL team, which is now called Phoenix Rising, was a head coach there. And so football, as I said, I think I'd always planned when I stopped playing football that, I'm not saying I wouldn't do anything, but I'll probably walk away from football, but it's a game that I can't do without.
And we've all seen the documentary, and we've all seen the bit where you kind of lose the plot, so to speak. So what kind of manager are you? Are you more an Alex Ferguson? Or?
No, I think I've got a bit of both. I think here, I'm very, I wouldn't say friendly with the players, but I got on well with the players. I look after them. I know what each of them, what they need, if they need a kick up the backside, an arm around you. But I think in the documentary, you see that the most of it's all the frustrations that I've got to deal with, mainly off the field. Because when you think about the club as a whole, when I first started, there was no changing rooms. The club had just only started. We're in League Two. They didn't have training kit. I think each player took their own ball. Like even the players, it was winter time, they're wearing like Manchester United tracksuits and Liverpool jackets. It was just like with Argos Rovers, really. And there were no dressing rooms, no floodlights. There was nothing. And step by step, we're now the only club in India that's sponsored by Adidas. We've got, the government built dressing rooms. We've got floodlights, and we're one of the we're quite a famous club throughout the world in terms of where we are and the rise to fame and how it's all happened, and also the various things that we've got to overcome. But I think it's, it's even now, there's, just for example, we're sponsored by Adidas, and I told them at the end of last season before I went away with training kits, make sure each player has 4 or 5 black t-shirts or just all one colour. But again, they give you 5 different colours. And then even just trying to coordinate them coming to training, and maybe a player's lost a t-shirt or it's gone missing in the laundry. It's almost like every day you wake up and there's going to be some issue or some problem to overcome, and I get used to it, but at times it frustrates me. And I think here that the culture where we are, apart from the ownership group, everybody else tends to think, they don't think ahead. They'll come up to you and say, 10 minutes before train's away to start, I forgot the balls, or I forgot the bibs, or something. And that's why I lose my head and I get all, basically pissed off and, start having a go at the nearest person to me. And and I think I'm not getting any younger. I'm 51 now. So they say as you get older, you get grumpier and grumpier. And I think I am. But I think at times I've got good cause to blow up now and again. And everybody just accepts it and they just go on with it.
Well, I'm sure I heard somewhere that 50 is the new 40. But
not here. I think I'm actually about 60. I think I've aged about 10 years being here. Not lost 10 years.
So like you said, that must be really difficult then, because you played at Aberdeen under Fergie, you played at Rangers under Walter, and then to maybe come in to manage at sort of what sounds like junior level with the facilities and stuff. That must be really difficult to get your head round.
It was hard at the start. I just think, to be honest with you, it's I sort of went in with no idea what I was going into, but I think, to be honest, how quickly the club's grown. We won the league and went unbeaten, and then we went into the big league, the big professional league here, and finished third in our first season, which exceeded any expectation. And there's Bollywood. There's a Bollywood production company that's going to do a movie on us, a Bollywood movie with actors, and there's another documentary here, obviously with the BBC one, and But the new one comes out, I think, the end of April. I think, mate, I don't know when it'll be with the current situation, but I think it's virtually finished now. So that's coming on, and but I just think the rise to where the club was to where it is now it's absolutely incredible. And I don't think any other clubs done it. But having said that, there's been so many frustrations along the way, and things you take for granted back home, even like internet, even electricity, phoning home, even facilities. I mean, where we train's good. It's a pitch because it's an AstroTurf pitch, so we can train and play there. But before that, we're training in sort of horrible bumpy parks, and you had players that would make excuses about not coming to training. I had one guy called Akib, who's no longer here. This was ready to start. He wouldn't show up to training one day, and I asked him the next day, "Where were you?" He said, "A puncture on his bike, his motorbike." And then about 2 weeks later, he sent me a picture with him standing next to his bike, pointing a finger to his burst tyre on his bike. And I thought, okay, fair enough. And then about 3 weeks went past, and he sent me the same picture again.
Oh.
Same picture. So obviously he didn't last too long, but here you got to be careful here as well when you sort of discipline people, because what happens is they're so family orientated, and somebody will say, "Oh, I can't come to training. My third cousin's in hospital with an infection," and I'm thinking, well, you see all around the world, you get like professional football players that maybe their parents pass away, and they might get a day off for the funeral, but they're back training again. These guys, and I think it's you got to be careful because you might offend some of them just with our culture, and that's the thing that I've had to deal with is respect everybody's culture, and try and give and take a little bit. We've got one player who's played every game since I've come to the club. He's probably the best Kashmiri at the club, called Farhan. He's a bit like, well, he smokes about 40 a day, and although you never ever see him unless you're in an airport and he's a smoking lounge, you see him through the window. But he's a guy that what happens is you'll play a game, and maybe with a few games, and they'll say, right, okay, end of last season, the season finished with about a 3-week break until the Super Cup game. So I gave them all 5 days off. But the problem is when you give Farhan, a few days off, he forgets to come back. And then he's always changing his mobile phone, so you can never get in touch with him. And then this particular time, and he speaks no English. He's probably the only player that can't speak any English. So I find it difficult, but I think we understands what I want. So one day I was in a hotel and he was staying at home, and I hadn't seen him for a long time. I'm asking people, where is he? No one knew. He comes to the hotel, and I get a call to reception to go down and talk to him. So I go downstairs, and Farhan's standing there, and I'm thinking this isn't going to go well because I've got no idea what he's going to say. So luckily there was someone there to help interpret. So anyway, he basically said that he apologises for not coming to training for the past few days because he's suffering out-of-body experiences, and he's going he's on his way to a monastery and to see a monk, and hopefully if that all works out, he'll be back at training tomorrow. So just obviously a pack of lies, but but you get to the point when you don't even what do you call it? You don't even ask questions anymore. You just okay, whatever. And you find them now and again, but when you find the players, particularly from Kashmir, they've got no idea why they're getting fined because it's just the way they are. They show up and come and go as they please.
What kind of a level are the players in over there, David? Because obviously there's a lot of people over here who don't really know much about Indian football, and we hear a lot about the cricket over there and how much money gets put into that. But what kind of level are the players? Well,
I think the player, I would think they're probably the top end of the Championship in Scotland and the bottom end of the SPL. I would think. My son's Mason, he's here. And then obviously Callum Higginbottom's here. He was at Partick and Kilmarnock, and then we've got a player, Aaron Katebi's Zambian international. We've got players from Ghana, Ivory Coast. So the level's pretty good, and it's getting big. It's getting better all the time. So, a lot of people, because they don't know the level, they think, oh, it's not a great level, it's a poor level, but it's not. It's actually a very good level. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of Africans play here. You're allowed 6 foreign players, 5 can start the game. And there's players that are probably good enough to play in the Premier League in Scotland, I would say. But the problem is they haven't played X amount of times for their countries, so they can't get work permits and visas. And India's the easiest place to get a visa. So I think that's why the level's very good.
I was actually also going to ask you. We hear a lot in this country about the the poorness of referees. What's the refereeing standard like over there, and does it really frustrate you?
Well, we've actually, believe it or not, in the last 2 games we've had the most horrendous decisions ever. So there was one that we're playing against a team called Naraka at home, and two of the Naraka players, one tackled the other one like into his chest. He was obviously didn't know where the ball was. He turned around and stuck his foot on his own player's chest, and the guy goes down. And they sent the Naraka player off, gave him a red card. And but then eventually the fourth official, it's on TV. All the games are live on TV and things like that. And the fourth official had to basically radio on and say, "Listen, that can't happen. That can't happen." So obviously that got rescinded. And then we just played a game against East Bengal just recently, and it all kicked off because the referee lost control of the game. Callum got sent off. I think we got 3 players sent off. They got 1 player sent off. And it all came by the referee lost control because about maybe 20 minutes into the game, one of our players, Danish, gets a yellow card. It was a tackle. Okay, you could say it was a yellow card, no problem. Then he was running towards goal, but the ball got played through him. He went across the goalkeeper. No, he went across a player, and he stumbled. He sort of tripped himself up by accident, and then as he went down, he got caught by a player. It wasn't a penalty kick. Anyway, he gets a second. I think the referee forgot he gave him a yellow card. Gave him a second, a yellow card. Then thought to himself, "Shit, I've already had his second one," so he sent him off. And then one of our players got involved in something, so he couldn't sit. He was trying to even it up, and he just lost control of it. And at the end, there was a riot at the end of the game. There were supporters on the pitch. All sorts of things were going on, and it's obviously there's a lot of discipline stuff going on at the AIFF because of it. But they all make mistakes. But sometimes, sometimes they just, they make it hard for themselves. As I say, that was in 2 weeks, and there's been a lot of bad decisions. I remember one time last season we're playing against Chennai City, and we were getting absolutely battered. It was nothing each with 20 minutes to go, and our player basically he tried to shield the ball, and the guy moved out the way, and he sort of fell, and the referee gave us a penalty kick, and it was never a penalty kick. And then anyway, we won the game, so I think it all evens itself up. But I think it's difficult. But in India, it's very hard because there's a team called Indian Arrows that play in the league. They're like a developmental team. They're like I think it's the India under-21s national team that play in the league. So just to give them a bit of experience and what have you. And you'll find that referees protect them so much. I mean, there's guys there playing for them 17 or 18, and I've got this player 6'7", African from Ivory Coast, big Crizzle, and anytime he gets the ball, even if he's shielding the ball, his elbows are up, and yellow card, free kick. So it's actually, it can be frustrating a little bit.
It sounds like Wally Collum might fit right in over there.
Well, it's funny because when that name gets mentioned a lot in training when we're making decisions in training. We get like Jimmy or Jonathan shouting Willie Collum and stuff like that. So it's fun. It's good.
Yeah, well, it's necessary.
Yeah.
Over here, obviously, we've got the Europa League and the Champions League. Is there any equivalent over in for you guys in India?
Yeah, there's the Asian Champions League. So at the moment, the league's been suspended, and we've got a game in hand. We've got 5 games left, but we've played a game less than everybody. And to win that game, we'd be second in the league, and that qualifies you for the Asian Champions League. So It's a similar. There's a Champions League here, so obviously if we were to finish second, I don't know what's going to happen with the league. It's obviously been suspended, but so the winner goes to the Champions League, and so does the second place.
What I was actually going to say, it was just on the leagues getting suspended. Have you got any kind of idea what should happen, or are you just going to leave it and just obviously see what comes?
Well, I just see what comes, but it's difficult because when you look at all the leagues around the world, obviously you look at Celtic as well. It's a big year for them, and I've heard a lot of people saying that really the season either has to continue or it's null and void. And then I just look at, like, you look at the Scottish League. Okay, Celtic are probably far enough ahead, but then you've got Dundee United are trying to get up, and then you've got Hearts that have got a good chance of not being relegated, and then you've got the playoffs, the second bottom against the championship teams, then the other leagues as well. It's like, what happens to them? They've put money in. It's a real tough call, and I'll be honest with you, I've got no idea what the solution should be. In India, just if we look at the league we're in, apart from the second place, everything else is sort of much. It's almost settled. Mohan Baganov, they've already won the league. They won it pretty early. Apart from the second place, and even our league, there's probably about 10 points separate second to 11. So in theory, anybody could get relegated. So I think what the league might do here is just, I don't know about the Champions League spot, but I think they might just sort of call it as it is, because Mohan Bagan have won the league, but they're actually going to merge with ATK and play in the ISL, and then they'll have no relegation this year. So our league's almost sort of easy to sort out, but all the other ones with playoffs and big money, and like Hearts, for example. If you were the owner of Hearts, you'd be pretty pissed off that we just called it now, and because they'll lose a hell of a lot of money, and they know what it's like. They've already been down the Championship, so I don't know how they're going to make the decisions. If it's FIFA or UEFA are going to make the decision for everybody, or is it going to be each league or organisation that's going to deal with it? I just don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be the big problem, and that's when you're going to start seeing, lawyers involved and stuff. You were mentioning Hearts there, and obviously Hearts have recently come out and asked everybody to take a 50% wage cut to avoid redundancies. How are Real Kashmir dealing financially with no football? Does it affect you as much?
Well, all the games are, we get around about 20,000 at a game, although it only holds. It's had to be restricted with various things that go on here. Just some political issues has been here. They've had to restrict it, but we're getting, it holds 14,000, but we're getting about 10 or 12. But normally we get about 20,000 at the games, and obviously it's free. There's no charge to get in. So I think the owners, he's also a very wealthy businessman, and he's a very generous person, and there's been no sign of anybody taking pay cuts or anything. But he'll come in the dressing room before games, and that a lot of clubs have been at before. There's a bonus structure, but he won't. He'll just come in and say, right, okay, maybe 5 minutes before the start of the game, here's the bonus today. It's maybe 30,000 rupees, which is £300, or he's good that way, and he knows that obviously it's football is very difficult to make any money out of it, and I think the players get paid until the end of April anyway. So after that, the season's there's a break before players get paid again till we start again in probably August or September, whenever we start. But I've seen it throughout, and I think clubs, I think players really have to realise the situation as well. Is that it's no one's fault really, but the clubs have to survive. Otherwise, players don't have jobs.
Oh, absolutely. And just finally on Real Kashmir, David, what's your sort of kind of immediate and long-term aims? Is it just to get into that Champions League, possibly win the league?
Yeah, I think, well, each year we're getting stronger and stronger, and next season we want to really challenge to try and win the league next year. And obviously at the worst get in the Champions League, which we had a decent shot of this year. We just missed out on that last year. But I think we are really, I think I've been in here long enough now when the owner's ambitious, and I might try and get some more players from Europe to sort of bolster this, maybe more experienced players. So that's the plan. But I do feel we've got a good chance next year. This has been my second almost full season in this I League, and I've sort of worked it out pretty good.
No, but absolutely. Well, all the best for the seasons to come whenever they start back.
Yep, exactly.
If I could just a wee couple of questions on Rangers just now, and it was just, what do you make as a manager of the job that Steven Gerrard's done since he came into the club?
Yeah, no, I think he's done a fantastic job, and I always said when Gerrard got the job there, that because of who he is and his reputation, his playing career, and his fame, that he'll get more time than what most other managers would. I think Warburton and Coutinho were always under a lot of pressure from day one. I don't think it was a fan. They're never fans' favourites, I wouldn't say. But I think I've always thought Steven Gerrard coming in is a bit like a Graham Souness move for the club. Somebody that hasn't really coached for very long, but obviously a great reputation. And as soon as somebody like Steven Gerrard, goes into the Ibrox dressing room, he'll get instant respect because of who he is. And I think that's helped him. And I think he's, bit by bit, he's, made the club more and more successful. But the one thing that I think, the same as every other Rangers supporter, is that, after the break, when they've come back, I just don't know what's happened. But I think maybe he's realised that some of the players that he's got aren't consistent enough, or maybe feel too comfortable within the setup, and I think he'll make. I think he's going to make big changes next year.
Well, actually, you just stole my next question. It was just about, it's because it's been 2 years in a row now at January that we seem to have just capitulated. And as a manager, when you look at that, how can you possibly explain the exact same capitulation 2 years in a row?
I think you can. I don't know if it's how many of the existing players are still there, but maybe it's a bit of pressure because you come into the turn of the year when it's almost the home straight to the league title. Rangers signed off the first part of the season by beating Celtic, and then they come back and they started pretty slack. But I think for me it goes down to the players' character. Maybe they're not strong enough or have got enough bottle to go and continue what they've started off. Because I think at the start of the season, I always remember when I was at Rangers, I remember Ali McCoy says it's every time we were around about December time, we were never flying away with the league. Sometimes we're even second or third in the league. And it was just the home straight that we had the more sort of bottle and more determination than other clubs around us. Aberdeen or Celtic, or I remember Motherwell and Hearts a few times were up there. But we had the bottle and the desire. And I think, I'm not saying the players don't have the bottle, but to play for Rangers, you're expected to win every single game. There's no excuses. And you can tell by Steven Gerrard's post-match interviews, he never hides. He always takes the blame himself, and he says how it is, which is good. That's what every supporter wants to hear. But I just think that they probably need players with a bit. I don't even know it's experience of winning cups or what have you. But I think just a bit more desire and probably the bottle when the real games matter. Because I think they've always been good at playing against the bigger teams. They've done a good run in Europe this year. They've they beat Celtic at the tail end of the year. But it's the teams that the lower. I'm not saying the lower level teams, but the teams near the bottom of the league. It's those ones, they struggle a little bit, and they should really be tearing them apart. And that's the secret to winning leagues is, it's okay getting yourself up for the big games, but you've got to do it in the other games. I always found that we used to go to places like Brockville and Broomfield, and there were hard places to go, and you couldn't play you couldn't play the way you want to play. You just had to dig out the results, and that's why we were successful with guys like John Brown, Dave McPherson, Stuart McCall, guys that would just battle and kick anything that moved to win games.
Well, you're talking about Bottle there, and a man who plays in your position now, Borna Barisic. Could you believe the turnaround in Borna? Because when he first came in, a lot of people were saying, oh, he doesn't have the bottle to play for Rangers. He was going down injured all the time, and then all of a sudden, now Roma are looking at him for a possible 15 million.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of it goes. You know, sometimes I know with foreign players, we had many players when we were there coming in that, like Basil Bolly and Joachim Björklund, they all found it a bit difficult to struggle in to settle in at the start. And eventually, you look at Björklund, you know, he struggled a bit. He left and went to Valencia and won the Champions League with them. You know, and then you get guys like Peter van Vossen, you know, played in World Cups. He struggled at Rangers. But I think it takes time because, you know, I think, you know, when you look at the countries they've came from, you know, it's total football. And, you know, and in Scotland, you know, you're going to Dingwall, you're going to Inverness. You know, you're going all sorts of places on a Tuesday night. It's pouring the rain and gale force winds. So it takes a bit of time to settle in as well. And maybe, you know, when you play for Rangers and you put that jersey on, it's the expectations, as I said before. You're expected to win every game, no matter how good the club's going in the league. You're expected to win every game. And some players take a little bit of time to settle in, and some players can't do it.
I suppose as supporters we're a wee bit pig-headed because we just assume that every player that comes to Rangers lives and breathes it the same as us. And I suppose we can't really accept it when a player, we don't feel that a player's putting in 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that they're not putting under a 100%. I think a lot of it's to do with, you know, their mental state and, you know, can they play in front of 50,000 people? You know, because a lot it's. And it's a passionate support at Rangers. And I've found that over the years at different places I've gone to play at and teams you play against. The atmosphere's different, but at Rangers, you know, they just demand, because every person in that stadium wants to wear a Rangers jersey, and they expect every player that pulls on a Rangers jersey to have the same passion and same feelings as they have.
Well, I would love to pull on a Rangers jersey. I just can't get one to fit.
I'm like that now.
If we just take a wee quick look at your early life, David, and I was wondering, what was Aberdeen like to grow up in the early 70s?
No, it was just like everywhere else. The only difference between, like, say, Glasgow and Aberdeen, there was no ash pitches, no blaze pitches, so we never get so many skint knees as people did in Glasgow. But you know, I didn't even start playing football until I think it was 7 or 8. I wasn't interested in football, and then it wasn't until Aberdeen won the cup, the League Cup. They beat Celtic 2-1 at Hampden. They won the League Cup in 1976, and it was just then that suddenly I just wanted to play football. And I mean, people laugh when I tried out for the primary school team at 8, and I never made the team. And I got told at school on the Friday, I got told early in the week that I didn't make the team, I wasn't good enough. And then someone called off, and I was a sub, and I was actually put on as a sub and then taken off again. I was that bad. And then after that, for some reason, I just kept playing in the back garden at my mum and dad's house. I had a swing. Well, my sister had a swing that a lot of my mum's family come from Peterhead, so there was obviously fishermen and stuff. So I got this old fishing net from a trawler and just draped it over this swing. So my sister never got to use a swing anymore, and all I did was just play, hit the ball off a wall, hit it into the net, into my 10 goal, and then suddenly, just by sheer practice, I ended up getting in all the select teams, and finally ended up signing an S form. I think it was at 13. Alec Ferguson asked me to go to sign an S form just a week after I got asked to go to Manchester United, because they couldn't sign players till they were 14, but they wanted me to go there and train for the school holidays. But no, it was good. And at that time, Aberdeen were successful. I'd go and watch Aberdeen with my dad, and they were a real, you know, because at that point Aberdeen were challenging Rangers and Celtic. They were winning things, and you know, they had some obviously players like Willie Miller, McLeish, who who I was fortunate enough to end up playing with. Guys like Joe Harper. I used to remember, that was my idol when I was a kid was Joe Harper. And then, I was fortunate with Alec Ferguson because, I was playing the reserves at 14. I even remember playing against Derek Johnston at Pittodrie. At that point, he's playing as a centre back. He was in the reserves. I don't know how old he was then. At that point, I fought a striker at the time, so I was right up against Derek Johnston. I think John McDonald played that day as well. It's one of the games that I really remember the most. I actually scored 2 goals for Rangers when I was at Aberdeen in the reserves. We were winning 2-0. No, in fact, we were winning 1-0. 20 minutes to go, and I scored 2 own goals. So I started my scoring goals for Rangers at an earlier age.
See, the writing was on the wall then.
Exactly, yeah.
Just on Peterhead, my great uncle's a massive Berwick supporter, Berwick Rangers, and I went up to Peterhead to watch Peterhead versus Berwick. It's the coldest place I have ever been in my life.
Oh, it's horrendous. Well, Mason, my son, he played there before he came over to India, and I'll never forget going to Balmoor, and I don't know what, but it must have been. I think it was maybe even March, I think it was. And it was so windy that the ball wouldn't even go out the 18-yard box. The goalkeeper couldn't kick it out the 18-yard box. And I was just watching the game. I'm just thinking, that must be absolute. And Mason said it's horrendous playing there.
Yeah, well, I'll show you how pig-headed some Rangers supporters are. I walked into the ground up there and I says, where's the away end?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But that's how pig-headed some fans are. But you kind of got your start in the first team at Aberdeen at 17. Now that must have been quite daunting getting in there with your Willie Millers and your Alec McLeish's and
I found that hard because I obviously idolised those people. I'd even had when Aberdeen won that cup in '76. I've even got autographs of Willie Miller and all those guys. And I was in a pretty good team at Aberdeen when I first got in. It was Jim Layton was in goals. It was McLeish and Miller, McKimmie, Jim Bett, Billy Stark, Peter Weir was there, John Hewitt, Davy Dodds. I think Frank McDougall was there as well. So it was almost a bit unreal that I actually because before, as I said to you, I would go with my dad to watch the games. One of the funniest things I ever had, how my life changed when I got my first game for Aberdeen. I used to go to, my dad would go to the Bonnecord Golf Club across the road before games, and in those days there was no mobile phones, so I couldn't contact my dad or anything. So what the daily routine would be, I'd go to the golf club with my dad. He'd go in the bar. I would have to sit in with all the kids because I was only 16, 17, and he would come through a bag of crisps and a Coke for me. And then he'd go to the game. I'd go in the front entrance bit because all the young boys got to do that. And then this one day, same setup. I was sitting in there. In fact, I actually had to go for a pre-match meal that day. That's what it was. So I did that, and then I sub. I didn't even expect only 2 subs in those days, and normally Fergie would take maybe 18 players, and 2 or 3 of them would be young players. And the week before, I was one of the young boys sat in the stand, and then suddenly I was on the bench, which was a total shock. I didn't even know until I think it was 2:00, and I couldn't even tell my dad. I had no mobile phone, nothing. So he had no idea. So obviously he's watching the game, and here's his son warming up behind the goal, and here's him coming on, no idea what's going on. So then I had no car in those days, so I had to go back into the golf club. So I thought I would just wait in the locker room like I normally did, but I was taken through into the bar. I got asked to sign autographs, and then somebody bought me a beer, and I was still 17. A week earlier, I wasn't even allowed in the bar.
How is that actually? That was one thing I was going to ask you. See, as when you come through as a professional player at Aberdeen Rangers or whatever you go, is it difficult getting stopped all the time, asked for autographs, people that you don't know coming up to you going, "Oh, hi Davey, how are you?"
Yeah, I found it really hard. That's the one thing I liked when I went to America, was that nobody knew who I was, and it's not a big-headed attitude. It's just that I just think I'm a normal person. I'm not any better than anyone else, and I found it a bit. I know over the years people have said, "Oh, he's arrogant," or "He's just dead quiet," or whatever. But I'm actually, sort of shun away from those things because I don't think I'm famous. I don't think I'm anything special. I'm just a normal person, and I found it very, very difficult when people ask me for autographs because I'm thinking I'm just a normal guy, and that's something I've always had about myself, and sometimes I wouldn't say I would have avoided it, but I could see somebody come and you think, oh, I know, and I maybe came across arrogant, but that certainly wasn't how I am.
No, I know how you feel. I've got about 400 followers on Twitter, so I try and just keep my head on the ground. But just going back to that Aberdeen team, and like you said, you won the League Cup in '89 and the Scottish Cup in 1990 against Celtic, and there was absolutely no fear. I know it wasn't really the same kind of Rangers team as what it was when Souness came in, but there was no fear of playing the Old Firm back then.
No, I think that's because there was Willie Miller and Alton McLeish in the team at that point. And then they were obviously used to, they had that really successful side, winning the league, a couple of times in the Cup Winners' Cup against Madrid and the Super Cup. And, and I think it was those two that really spurred things on. But I think when Alex Ferguson left there, you could just tell it was almost like a funeral the day after Ferguson left to go to Manchester United. It was just like it was like as if it had been a death. That's how bad Pittodrie was. It was just a horrible place for a while after that, and then I think I think obviously Willie Miller was coming to the end of his career. Jim Leighton moved on to Manchester United, and the team just, I'm not saying it didn't have the belief because Fergie was the belief. And I think, Ian Portfield came in after that, and then there was Alex Smith and Willie Miller was the manager. And I just feel that, it's like the problem Manchester United have got now, you can never follow Fergie. That's the part of it. And I think the passion, when he left, the passion, the desire really sort of went with him.
Aye, like you say, you're definitely seeing that at Manchester United just now. Yeah. But then you moved to Rangers for just under $1 million. And as a kind of proud Aberdonian, was it a difficult move to make?
No, it was hard in a way. I mean, I think for me, the way I felt was that I'm still playing against the same teams. I'm obviously going to a bigger club and a better club, and it was almost like an easier step to take. But obviously with my dad, it was very difficult. He's an Aberdeen supporter, and I'm not saying he wasn't happy, but he obviously had his reservations about me going. So I went there, and as I said, I've got no fear. I'll go and try anything, and it wasn't until I actually signed for Rangers that I really realised how big Rangers are as a club. First of all, you got to wear, in those days you had to wear a collar and tie to go to training. You're met by Stan, the commissioner. You're then passed on to Jimmy Bell. And then, you walk in the Rangers dressing room and, here's McCoist, Haitley, who else was there? It was Terry Hurlock, Mo Johnson, Ali McCoist, Ian Durrant, all the big names. Mikhailichenko was there at the time. Andy Gorham had just signed, Stuart McCall. So it was walking into, like a room of basically superstars, really. And Jimmy Bell, there was no kit numbers at that time. He just had a training number. And Jimmy Bell says to me, he says, here's you here, number 6. He says, you've got big shoes to fill. That's Terry Butcher's number. And I goes, oh my God. And I'm thinking, put me under pressure straight away. So it was a real eye-opener joining the club. But I always had a lot of people ask me about, because at that point, I think it was the biggest fee that Aberdeen had ever received. And it was done through a tribunal. So it wasn't sort of an agreed fee in those days. Rangers offered something, Aberdeen wanted X, and then everybody has to go to the SFA or the Scottish League, and they decide over a table what the fee is. And a lot of people ask me, are you bothered or you feel pressure that's kind of money? Do you feel pressure that you have to produce? And to be honest with you, I was almost of the impression that I'm actually flattered that somebody would even pay that money for me, and it actually gave me confidence to go and play, and I think from day one the Rangers supporters, I'm not saying they took to me, but they accepted me, and I settled in pretty well.
We have actually seen players that have struggled with the fees that have been paid for him. You just look at Ryan Kent this season at Rangers,
Yeah.
and he seems to be struggling with the weight, and that was what, $7 million we paid for him. And I suppose back then, 970,000 back then is quite a lot in today's money. Did your dad have come to Ibrox and watch the games?
No, he did. Yeah, I mean, he always came, and it wasn't until he never really sort of gave his approval until maybe, I think it is, I don't know if it's halfway through that season or the following season. It was almost, he sort of says to me, son, that's the best decision you've ever made. And yeah, he had obviously reservations because of the bitter rivalry between Rangers and Aberdeen, and I felt that he was, he came to every game, and my brother, it was funny because he come to every game, and he was actually quite funny because he said to me, he says, I was an Aberdeen supporter, and then I was going to watch Rangers. I was actually confused. He says, I was actually confused as to what, am I a Rangers supporter, am I an Aberdeen supporter? And he says, as soon as I signed for Leeds United, my brother then realised that he's actually an Aberdeen supporter. So he lives in Oban, and he goes, he drives up every game Aberdeen from Oban to watch them. So he's a real Aberdeen supporter. But my dad was a little bit hesitant, obviously, because my career to that point had gone well, and like you say, a lot of people go to Rangers and sometimes they fail.
Did you ever look up in the stands after a goal to see if your dad was celebrating?
No, it was too many. No. Well, and plus, I never scored that many either. No. But he was good. He would come to all the, like, we played Leeds United and the Marseille games and Juventus and all that. So he was always coming to the games, and I think it was more to support his son more than anything.
I don't know. My son signed for Celtic. I'm not sure.
Sure. You better not. You better not repeat that.
Was there any kind of similarities in management style between Walter Smith and Sir Alex?
I think Walter Smith. What I liked about the one thing I liked about Walter Smith more than anything, obviously his man management was good. He would often, when we played Aberdeen away, he would we'd train on a Thursday morning. The game's on a Saturday. Just say, get yourself up the road, see your family, and I'll see you at the hotel on Friday night. And he trusted me to go and do a bit on my own and on Friday. And then if he'd win, he'd tell me to take a couple of days off and stay up in Aberdeen. But to be fair, the one thing he said to me when I first signed for him, he says, listen, you look after me and I'll look after you. And it was I think he gave me one bollocking once in 6 years there, which I thought was good. Where we played Hibs in the semi-final League Cup, and Keith Wright scored to put us out of the cup, and he absolutely slaughtered me after the game about, you're a Rangers player, I don't care if you kick the ball out of the park every time you get it, you must keep taking the ball, and that's the one and only time he's ever had a go at me. So but his style was good. He managed to keep players that weren't playing happy, and then if you remember the time there was the Falkirk, we lost to Falkirk in the League Cup, I think it was. We got knocked out. It might have been, who was it? Somebody knocked us out. Athens, I think Athens knocked us out of the Champions League, and we got beat by Celtic, and people were sort of calling for Walter Smith's head then, and the one thing was he never showed it in any pressure he was under, never showed it to the players, and I think that's why we were successful, that even if we'd lose a game, the preparation for the next game was the same, his demeanour would never change, and he would go and have a go at players, now and again, but I think with Alec Ferguson in his early days, he was brutal at times. There was times, you'd even win 5-0 in games and you'd come in and slaughter you. But one mistake you made, and I remember you used to walk off at half time and end of a game, and maybe you talk to another player and he would say, right, I think I'm going to get it here. And then true enough, he just picks up the mistake. He's a perfectionist, and he just goes through you.
And I suppose also the Alex Ferguson and Walter Smith shared Archie Knox. Just how important was Archie Knox for your career?
Well, like Archie was at Aberdeen. He was like really he was very similar to Fergie. He was a hard nut. He'd have a go at you, but at Rangers he changed a little bit. He was more like a bit of a social convener kind of thing. He was, he was fun with the players, and I think that was because there was real loud ups and Gascoigne came, but Archie was just a laugh a minute at Rangers. But I've spoken to one or two players since then, and that were still at Rangers at the time, and they said it's easy to be like that if you're winning all the time. Everybody had a bit more rope to play with. A few players got themselves into trouble, and they've sort of gone unnoticed. And I think that's just because the team was successful, they're winning all the time, and plus it was in the 6 years time there. I don't think there was a bad spell really. We might have lost one or two games, or maybe 2 or 3 games, important games, but that's been about it. And I think it was just the atmosphere was for the whole 6 years was incredible, really.
I suppose, really looking back at that era, the only thing really that a lot of Rangers fans did complain about was Europe. And apart, obviously, 1992 we done really well, and whatever happened with Marseille happened. But can you put your finger on just why it never really worked in Europe?
I think it was because at the time we were so dominant in Scotland. I remember we played Partick at Firhill, and I think we won 2-1 or 2-0 or something. And then 3 days later you're going to play Juventus away. And I think it's we were a team that attacked all the time in Scotland, and suddenly we didn't. I naturally knew that I had to defend more in playing in Europe, but we almost treated each game, if you're playing against Partick Thistle, it's the same as playing against Juventus, and I think you may have to change a little bit having been in coaching for a number of years, you have to change a little bit and adapt a little bit to the teams you're playing against, and but I think it's changed now. In those days, Scottish teams and British teams used to play 100 miles an hour, whereas teams like Ajax and all that would, just play possession, and as soon as you pissed them off by hitting the post or something, they'd go up the park and score, and then just play possession again. But I think that might change a little bit more has changed, because you remember when we played that successful year, there was only 3 foreign players, or two or three foreign players allowed. So it was all like blood and guts with the Scottish players. But then Loud came and Gascoigne came, and it's hard to tell, because they've had spells. Walter Smith, I think, got them to the UEFA Cup for Europa Cup, whatever it's called. But during that time, I just think it was the gulf between playing in Europe and playing in Scotland. It was just a bit too much and too big of a change, going from one game to another.
Style of play as well. You're definitely right with that. And I still think that's one thing that we are still quite far behind in, is managing games in Europe and stuff like that. Now, I know you're asked about this all the time, so I won't ask you about the incident. I'll just ask you, are you still pals with Joe Miller? Well, whenever I see him, I'd say when I was at Aberdeen, I was I was roommates with him at Aberdeen. When we were in the first team together, obviously he went to Celtic. And then he actually got invited to my wedding, but he was away on holiday or something. So, and I've done a coaching course with Joe as well. So he's obviously still a friend, albeit we don't see too much of him. But he's, that night, I've been asked a lot about it, and people it's always like when you're playing against your friend, I'm not saying you try a little bit harder, but you don't want him to get the better of you. And then Archie Knox was pretty good at winding me up all the time. He would just say to me, make sure you sort that wee fucker out in the first 5 minutes. And I think he might have been a bit pissed off because it took me 6 minutes to sort him out. But it was a lot of it to do with the conditions as well. But in those days, if you listen to Terry Butcher's reaction when he's doing the commentating, he couldn't believe I was sent off. And I think in today's game, you might get banned for a season or something after that challenge. It just shows you how the game's changed, and that was always the thing with a fullback was, whoever you're up against, make sure you sort them out in the first couple of minutes. And you had this thing as well, Archie, because Joe Miller, as soon as you started giving him a few hits, his hands would disappear in the sleeves of his jersey. And Archie would say things like, make sure wee Joe's hands disappear pretty quick.
And then you'd hear a shout from the dugout. He used to call me Dixie. He said, Dixie, that's it. His hands have gone. So that's what I'm saying. He was good. And then at half time, after I got sent off, Walter Smith comes in, and I'm thinking, oh my, I'm going to get it here. Oh, it's going to be a disaster. But before that, the old wooden stand at Hampden, I knew there was a goal scored, and I presumed it was Celtic, and wee Dory comes in and said that Coisty had scored, so that's made me a little bit happier. Then Walter comes in and says, what did he say to you? And I just says, he just told me to off. He's fucking prick. He's a fucking prick and all that stuff. So, so that was it.
And those days going down to 10 men almost meant that you were going to lose the game by definition. People didn't really come back if you'd been down to 10 men back then.
No, that's right. Yeah, and we did it again. We played Celtic at Ibrox in I think it was quarterfinals or semi-finals of the League Cup. Peter Huster got sent off. I think it was Hateley. Durant took the ball off Mike Galloway and squared it to Hateley. Hateley scored, but I remember Huster got sent off, and I think it was the same season, and that was the same one. You beat them again.
Just lastly on Rangers then, Tannadice 9 in a row. I've heard many people talk about it, and what I kind of take from it is it was just more relief than excitement, really.
No, it was. I think the big build-up was we were playing. Who was it? Motherwell. Was it Motherwell? Yeah, we were going to be playing Motherwell. That was a big party. I think all the T-shirts were printed, all the banners, and that was a big party day, the last home game. And then, obviously, I think it was Owen Coyle scored 2 goals against us, and we lost 2-1. So that was a bit of a downer. And then we all knew that going to Tannadice was one of the hardest places to go and win, particularly under the circumstances. I always found it a real difficult place to play, and it was never an easy game. And when we did it, you're right, it was a lot of emotions, a lot of relief more than anything. Obviously, it was Richard Goff's last game, and it was the last game that I played for Rangers. So it's never the same when you win it at home. It was a little bit when we won it at Broomfield once before, and it's not exactly the greatest place to win a league at Broomfield. But I think it was I think we're still disappointed, and suddenly we felt, Motherwell at home, it's a game that you should win and win the championship, and you do the lap of honour and things like that, and then you had to go to Tannadice. It was very, very difficult, but it just shows you how it was meant to be. Charlie Miller crossed the ball with his left foot and Loudon up heading it, which never happened. So no, it was a relief, but it was a bit of sadness as well. Just obviously it was the last time that I played for Rangers.
Just finally on Rangers, and I promise I won't keep you much longer. Playing for Rangers, obviously you play in front of 50,000. You're paid well. You've got a good life. Is it enjoyable to play for Rangers under that amount of pressure, having to win every week, or is it more?
Well, I think for me, I loved every minute of it, and I every professional game I played, I always treated it as if I'll never play another game, and I'm fortunate to be where I am, and lucky as well. So I was nothing better than running out at Ibrox in front of all the home support, and I was fortunate that in my time, Rangers supporters never turned against me, and I've seen players. I remember Dave McPherson. He went through a bad spell when every time he get the ball out, he was doing a donkey noise when he was running down the wing with the ball, and that's very, very difficult. I mean, so I got a bit of stick when I went to Leeds United, and I found it very hard. But to Rangers, I loved every minute of it, and as I say, I was lucky that the Rangers supporters took to me and never had any, I never got slaughtered from the sidelines, or I never heard it anyway. And
then you left Rangers to go to Leeds. Now, I was a young boy. I was maybe 8 or 9 when you left.
Yeah.
And I played left back because of you. So yeah. You kind of broke my heart, but I'm not asking for any apologies or anything.
Okay. Sorry.
But you went to Leeds and you got a really bad injury and you didn't play much. Just how difficult was that to deal with mentally?
Well, I think I was very fortunate not to be injured, and then I went there and my medical. I knew as soon as I signed that after I got the MRI scan in my knee, I knew I had an issue with with my knee that I'd been playing for 5 years with, that was never really disclosed to me. So it was a bit of a shock, and the deal almost fell through. And thankfully, George Graham had a holiday booked that night, so he forced it through because he had a plane to catch. Otherwise, I might have had to beg Rangers to take me back. But it was hard, and I think as soon as I knew that I had an issue with my knee, I just wasn't the same. Even though when I first started at Leeds in pre-season, I was doing really well, and in pre-season games. In the first game, we played Arsenal at Elland Road, up against Overmars and Ray Parlour and Ian Wright, and I got a good sort of reception from everybody, the supporters and everything. And then played Sheffield Wednesday, had a kicking match with Paulo Di Canio. He was there at the time, so that was good. And then suddenly George Graham decided that he just wanted me to defend. I didn't want me to overlap, and that took a lot out of my game. And then I think it was after about 30 games into the season, I worked for a header against Leicester, came down and my knee went, and that was basically the beginning of the end, really. Because I'd no ACL in my left knee, so I'd been playing without it for 5 years and didn't even know. And they say it was because I didn't know and my legs were strong enough for that to happen. So then, because there was no ACL in my knee, there was so much wear and tear in the bones in my knee and the articular cartilage and what have you. So there was a good chance. I knew straight away that was a good chance I wouldn't play. But then, I took about a year to come back, and that was really frustrating. George Graham at that point was great. He would look after me, maybe tell me to go take a break, go away on holiday, and what have you. So it was good that way. I got involved a little bit with coaching as well at the time. But it's just seeing everybody train. It's hard. It's okay if you're out for a few weeks, but when you're out for about a year, you see everybody training, or you see people getting injured, and you're spending time with them, and suddenly they're out training again, and it makes you really, really unhappy. You go home and you're miserable with the kids and with your family and what have you, and it's hard because it's all you want to do.
Yeah, totally.
And then at the, I tried to make a comeback. I went to Barnsley. I was going to go there on loan, but my knee was in too bad condition. So I would believe it or not, I played a reserve game. It was the last game I ever played. Well, not totally, but we played Aston Villa reserves, and Jockey Scott and Eb Scovedal came to watch me play because they wanted to take me to Aberdeen or Dundee. But after that game, I just knew my knee was gone, and then I had to go to get my knee cleaned out again, and the surgeon says to me, he says, that's it, you can't play at that level anymore. And it was actually it was a bit of a relief really, because I was struggling for 2 years, off and on, injured, and your hamstring would go, your groins would go, some would always be going because it's compensating for your knee, and it was almost being like a horse waiting to get shot.
Nah, you just know by that point then, don't you?
Yeah, and when he said, it was a bit of a relief when he told me that, because it was just that it was a slog, and it was just getting you down. Plus at that point I was 30, 31.
Well, final question then, because I've had you here for nearly an hour.
No problem.
Have you got any thoughts about your future in management, maybe outside Real Kashmir, or are you just totally focused on your career?
Well, obviously at some point I'd like to go home, have a crack there. But it's a bit of an emotional tie here, because, like I said before, I've been here since the start. So I've just been here, and obviously the owners, he's fantastic, and it's something that basically together we've built up something from virtually nothing. And it would be very difficult. Last year I had a couple of opportunities to go somewhere else in India, but I decided obviously to stay where I was, because I just would find it so hard someone else coaching the team. But again, I'm realistic enough to know that I'm not going to be here forever. It's like anywhere else it is. Once the club's more established, you lose a few games and anything can happen. But at some point you'd like another crack in Scotland. I think I was too young at Elgin and Montrose. I was only just stopped playing, having been at Leeds United and Rangers, and suddenly you're going to part-time clubs when you've got players that come to training once a week. And then, particularly in Elgin, with players in Dundee, Inverness, Aberdeen, Glasgow, nobody trained together. You just had to hope for the best that it worked on a Saturday. So it's, I've learnt a lot, and I think being in Real Kashmir, there's not much more to learn about. Not so much the game, but anything outside the game, because whatever disaster every manager's had collectively in the UK, I've had it all here in 2 years.
Absolutely.
And more.
Well, yeah, I've seen the news.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
David, thanks very much for joining us and taking time out your day to talk to us.
No problem, anytime.